Hi, welcome to the Yellows Talker Show. I'm DV LeBron. Today I have some very special guests, the mayor of Midlothian, Mr. Justin Coffman, and the city manager of Midlothian, Mr. Chris Dick. How you guys doing tonight?
Doing excellent, DV. Thanks for having us on.
Yeah.
Well, I'm trying to make sure that I cover it every year. I cover the budgets, and I had you guys to cover, and I wanted to kind of get information out there because I think it's key. I know it's been a little bit since you passed the budget. I think it was what, last month? And you've been hitting the pavement a lot. You've been real busy. So, I want to try to jog your memory on all this stuff. So I'm kind of going to divide. So you guys know I'm going to kind of divide the political, which is obviously the mayor, and then the non-political, which is the city manager. And there's a difference there. So I'm going to try to divide those in the questions that I ask.
Sure.
So I wanted to ask Chris. I wanted to ask you about what priorities did you want to cover in this budget, and did you bring forth to the council?
Well, I think there's a lot of things going on, so there's a lot of priorities. But one I think that we're really excited about, and I think the mayor can add on to this, is our school resource officer program. So we have authorized the council to fund that fully so that we can get all of our MISD campuses covered with the school resource officers and working with the MISD on that. So, so that was a big push this cycle, and we got that done. So, I think that was probably one of the major priorities from a public safety standpoint. We still continue adding some of with the fire positions, keeping staffing. So, being able to keep up with this market from a salary and benefits standpoint, that's been a priority since even going back to last year. But we were able to give raises to try to retain employees. It's a very tough employment market right now, and so being able to recruit and retain good employees is certainly a priority that I think we have been able to at least try to keep pace with and accomplish in this budget.
And Mayor, what was the council's kind of priorities this year?
Yeah, I think they're pretty much standard every year, and that is to focus really on safety and the health and well-being of our community overall. I think that's the reason we were elected to this position, is to really be the driving force behind ensuring that the Midlothian community and the citizens that live in it are healthy and they're safe. They have safe roadways to drive on. They have police that respond when they call 911. They have ambulances that show up whenever they need them. They have water that turns on whenever they turn the faucet on. And so I think it's really the basics. And, it's a lot of focus gets put on some of the other things that are on the outside. But really, when it comes down to it, I think the council, and rightfully so, was focused on the everyday sort of stuff, the less flashy, the normal stuff. So I think that we did a good job in addressing some of those things as a community. As you know, we're one of the fastest growing cities in the DFW area and in the state. And we have a drastic need for infrastructure. And so those things cost money and they're not cheap. But in order to service the citizens of Midlothian properly, we as a council have a duty to ensure that these basic things get taken care of.
So, Chris, the talking about infrastructure, what kind of expenses did you foresee? What kind of things did you want to address, or did you address in this budget that you passed as far as infrastructure?
Well, we continued with our road rehabilitation program. So those are the rehab of existing streets, but we also issued $12 million worth of the voter approved bonds from the past bond election to do Mockingbird Lane, and then start finish up some of the design, look at the right of way acquisitions on McAlpin. So continuing those infrastructure programs that were voter approved, but then also the rehabilitation and maintenance of some of our existing infrastructure is critical. And we're kind of seeing the maintenance part every year. I mean, that's just kind of a normal thing, but we are continuing with the voter approved bond program. Also on the water side of things, we're expanding our water treatment plant right now, and that's a big thing. The mayor mentioned people expect that when they turn the faucet on, they have water, and we have to stay in front of that growth that we're seeing. And so expansions of water plants, they take a long time. They're very expensive. So keeping up with that infrastructure is also a priority in this budget.
Okay. Mayor, when you were going through this this infrastructure thing, the infrastructure part of the budget, was there some kind of things that you specifically or the council wanted to really address, any infrastructure issues that you really wanted to kind of a little focus on?
Sure. Infrastructure is a broad term. A lot of things could be considered infrastructure. I think that one Chris has already highlighted, and that is in the police department, specifically with the SROs, school resource officers. The state mandated a requirement on the ISDs, all the ISDs within the state of Texas, to within a certain amount of years have an officer at every single school. Our district and our city have an amazing partnership where we got together and we accelerated that program in order to adequately fund it, really taking a community approach and meeting in the middle in order to fully equip our school district with safety officers. And that's an amazing program. So I consider that infrastructure, where a lot of people might look at just simply looking at roads and water and sewer and those various things. But if you think about infrastructure, it really is the basics of the community, as I mentioned before. And to me, that first and foremost is health and safety, and our kids, obviously, stating the obvious, are our most valuable resource and our most valuable asset. And so we need to focus on them. And I believe that we've done a good job in doing that. It's something I'm personally very proud of our council for taking the very proactive approach in.
I want to publicly thank the council for doing that, because you're right. The safety of our children is, it's got to happen. It's got to be taken care of. And I'm sure every parent in Midlothian agrees with that.
So they're, not to go too deep into it because I'm not a school board member, but they had some limitations on what they were able to do. And so the city partnered with them, footing the bill for a lot of this in order to take a community approach to meet that need at the schools themselves. And so it's really, you're talking about two taxing entities working together for the good of the community. That's a big deal. I don't think a lot of people realize. They just see there's officers at my schools or whatever. The reality is that partnership is a very unique thing that we, as all Midlothian citizens, should be very proud of.
Yeah, and there's different priorities. There's different things that go into each governing body, and to have you guys all work together for the safety of the kids, that's big, real big. Now, Chris, with the employees, and you talked about wanting to keep the employees in the city, and that's important. It keeps continuity. It keeps things functioning. What did you see as far as did you see pay raises this year? Who got the biggest increases? Was it across the board? Can you speak on that?
Yeah, so what we did was we budgeted a 4% raise. It's still a merit-based system, so even though we budgeted that, the employee still has to meet their minimum criteria to be eligible for that. But so at least though that we funded that, and as long as the employee meets all their performance criteria, they can get that. So that's on the merit side of things. We also got to look at things just like the benefits. And fortunately this year, we were able to really increase our insurance program, but at a lower cost because we got better rates. So a lot of it may not even cost more money, but a benefit addition that the employees can look at and really, see that we compare favorably or at least equal to our competitors in the market. So, it's kind of obviously salary is a big piece, but also the benefit piece is the other side of that.
Yeah, and everything is getting more expensive. And so I wanted to ask you about that. How have you seen the expenses grow for the city year over year?
Well, you're right. It seems like everything is more expensive, and people see it in their homes as well. I mean, but the things that we're buying, electricity, fuel, chemicals for our water treatment plant, the cost of vehicles, almost anything that we buy, we've seen cost increases and some very dramatic increases. So that's been a tough thing to wrestle with in this kind of high inflationary period that we've been going through as a country. So those are things that we just have to absorb and build into our budget and manage the best way we can within the budget that we have.
Mayor, and I've been purposeful in what I'm doing in covering the expenses, the things that have hit the city. And I mean, I'm only doing a 30,000-foot view. I'm not going into all the details, but I did this purposefully. It's because I wanted to ask you this question. Do you feel that the city council has been a good steward to the people's money in this budget?
Yeah, absolutely, without a doubt. Emphatically, I say yes. It's a difficult task. These are large numbers that we're talking about, and this council does not take it lightly. We had, I don't remember off the top of my head, but we probably had 5 or so workshops. 2 or 3 of those were all day long. So it is a strenuous process that we go through, where we go line by line through this, I don't know, 300 plus page document, and we hash it out, and we iron sharpening iron. We go back and forth with fellow council members. We go back and forth with staff in order to whittle things down, to get things to where we feel like it meets the needs of the community, and then also offers a nod to potential tax relief to the homeowner. And so it's a difficult task to manage this, and it's always controversial. Because everybody's got an opinion, and every opinion is valued, whether they're elected or not. And so we hear the voices, we hear those that show up to speak on behalf of the residents, and we see some of the social media stuff. We understand that it's not fun getting taxed. I don't like getting my tax bill, DB. Nobody, Chris doesn't like getting his.
You sure Chris don't like it?
But it's an unfortunate reality. In order to have the highest service level and to make this community thrive, and for this to be a place where you and I want to live and raise our kids, and hopefully our kids can live here one day and raise their kids here. Because we could go the other way. We could slash the taxes and make it to where it's much lower tax rate, but also we couldn't provide the level of services that we do. And so you couldn't guarantee that when you turn the water faucet on, the water's going to come out, because you've cut the taxes so much that you can no longer expand the water treatment plant, or whatever the case may be. You could use any example. You can no longer fill the potholes, so the roads go downhill. And so we are tasked with balancing this impossible challenge. And it's a really long way of saying, yes, I believe that we hashed it out. We had some heated debate. We had some healthy dialogue. And I believe that the citizens of Midlothian should be proud of all the elected members that participated in that process, and ultimately landed where we landed and approved this budget.
I want to thank Councilman Mike Rogers for he sat down with me for several hours at Befo Brady's and went through the budget with me. And I am not a citizen of Midlothian. All I do is I lost you there. But
No, sorry.
I'm not a citizen of Midlothian, so all I do is gather information for the public. I'm just a citizen of the county, and he sat down with me and took his time to explain. So thank you, Mr. Rogers, for doing that. Speaking of, and I wanted to get into taxes, but Chris, is there things that you looked in this budget and maybe tightened up on, or didn't ask for, or what are some of the cuts or some of the things that you looked at reducing this year?
Well, I think there's always additional personnel requests that don't make the budget. We could do millions and millions of dollars more in street repairs, and we just have to whittle that list down to what we can afford to do that particular year. There's always equipment requests that just we can't do on in a particular year. So there are always things that get whittled out. Now, a lot of that stuff happens early in the process when we're looking at strategic planning. Going back into the March-April timeframe when we're working on a strategic plan, which then leads into the budget process. So a lot of times those things are being cut out early in the process, just as we're looking at in budgeting and estimating for the coming year. So there are always those things that have to be put aside. They're important. They would be great things to add to the budget. They just simply can't be done, and so you have to push those to a future budget.
And I talked with I talked this year. I talked with Waxahachie city manager, and the mayor about their budget. Um, they, often Mr. Scott has told me about the unfunded, amount of work that's needed on the streets. Does Midlothian have? Do you have kind of a number? Is there something like you're behind? Like, do you have $47 million in repairs to do, but only have 4 million? Are you guys kind of in the same boat?
I would say yes. We look at about a 5 year just on our repair schedule. We have a 5 year list, and we break those out by year and what we're going to try to fund. So yeah, if you look at that list and said, a lot of them could be done this year, but we don't have the money. We're going to do them next year. But if you combine that list, yes, you would have millions of dollars worth of road rehabilitation that could be done if we had unlimited funding. So there are, yes, to answer your question, there are millions of dollars of repairs that will be done in a future year that can't be done in year one.
So there's one thing, since we were, and I'm going to roll into taxes right now. Since we were discussing taxes, what did I think I looked at the budget and it said something about the revenue increase was something like 17%. Now, I don't know how to read the budget like you guys, so please have grace with me. But it looked like there was a rise there. And then the truth and taxation statement said that there was, I believe it was 7% more this year or something like that. So I wanted you to kind of speak to that, the taxes and revenue side. And then I'm going to ask the mayor about the political side of taxes.
Sure. Yes, as the mayor mentioned, I mean, being one of the faster growing communities, you are going to have tax valuation growth. We also know that the property value of existing homes and businesses is growing rapidly too, given the high home price market that we're in. So let me say this, and I hate to steal this thunder from the mayor because they did a great job with this, but we implemented a 10% homestead exemption this year. And so that was to help offset the impact to homesteads and residents in our community. So, that's an offset there. They also implemented a disabled person's exemption as well. So we were trying to do some of those things that help offset the cost to the resident. But with the growth that we're having and the infrastructure needs and those sort of things, the budget is going up. The revenues are going up. There's no doubt about that.
Mayor, that every year we talk about this, and I know that you're fairly new in the mayor's chair. Congratulations again, if I haven't told you publicly. So every year I talk with public officials, and every year I bring up one of the questions that always come up. People talk about being taxed out of their home and not being able to afford their taxes, and it's almost fever pitch. It's as the years have gone by, it's almost become fever pitch. And then while the tax rate does go down because of the valuations, things go up. So as a council, did you guys discuss giving the people some really hard tax relief? Like, they throw around a no new revenue rate. Was that some discussed? Was maybe 3 or 4 cents? Was that discussed? Well, what kind of discussions did you have on that?
Yeah, I think everything was on the table. Dating back to 2018, which is my historical perspective on serving on the council and as the mayor pro tem in future years, we've seen the tax rate go down nearly 6 cents, just over 5 cents. And Chris can correct me if I'm wrong. But we've seen a pretty substantial tax rate deduction. We've seen us implement a senior citizens tax freeze. Chris just mentioned that we instituted a 10% homestead exemption for this current tax year, and we've preemptively implemented a 20% for next year, in addition to the exemption that we instituted for our disabled citizens. So there is a definite awareness by the council, I think it's safe to say, of the tax burden that's on the homeowner. I would say that there's a strategy in play that is intentional at attacking this tax rate situation directly at the homeowner in order to maximize and give the most tax relief for the homeowner themselves before going and exploring citywide tax rate deduction. So I think that there's a strategy in play, and I think it takes time to develop and to come to fruition fully. And so I would encourage people that have real concerns with that to be patient, to continue to understand that we're, like I said, we're balancing an impossible challenge in providing the services that we need to provide while also trying to lower the tax rate over and over. And so, long story short, I think that I would say, from my perspective, that we have seen tax rate reduction and we have seen intentionality behind homesteaders receiving immediate tax benefit this year and into next year.
Okay. Well, I mean, there's definitely a lot of discussions about that. And how do those exemptions, or better question, how does something like no new revenue, how does, 3%, Chris, when that gets put to you, how does that affect, or do you submit a budget like that with different tax rates and how it will affect the city?
So we don't create a separate budget, one at the no new revenue and one at our proposed rate. But what we do separate is all of our new, or what we call supplemental items, which were things like new personnel, new equipment, et cetera, that was not in the budget from the previous year. So we can look at that list, and if we wanted to start cutting taxes and cutting things, that's probably the first place we would look. Obviously, we can go into the base budget and tweak on that some more, which we try to do before we ever present the budget. But if there's additional things that you could obviously go into the base budget, but what we usually focus on is looking at those new requests that are supplemental that weren't in there last year, and start going through that list and looking at items that may be cut.
Okay. And I mean, it's one of the questions that I do want to ask you too is, just briefly before I start moving on, is when people say, hey, this is what I get at home and this is what I spend, and I don't spend more than what I get. The budget, kind of give a quick little how your budget that you're dealing with every year is different than a home budget.
Well, I think there's a lot of similarities, and then there's obviously some differences, but we strive for the same thing. We try to stay within the money that we're getting in expenses. So, but you will obviously see, and somebody could bring this up, is that, well, they adopted a deficit budget. Well, that's because we might have put money into, we always refer to it as fund balance. It's the same as a savings account. Maybe we had more revenue or less expenses last year, so we added money to the fund balance or the savings. Sometimes we take that savings and use it for something to benefit the community. So while some people would say it's a deficit budget, that's a planned deficit that we're going to take some money out of savings to buy a particular piece of equipment or do a road rehab, something that's one time. What we don't want to do is build in salaries and those things that are recurring on a deficit, if that makes sense. So I don't want my recurring expenses to outpace the current revenue. And so that's where that's typically how our budgets are done. And so I think they're similar to that of the homeowner, where they're looking at what their revenues are and what their expenses are. And then you will have bigger ticket items, like if somebody's buying a new home or buying a new car. I mean, you've got to plan for those, and that's the same thing that we do at a city on a very just from a simplified statement.
And we've got the challenge, DV, of just to add on to that, we've got the challenge of implementing and instituting some of the voter-approved projects. And so we may have our own personal opinions as council members and as staff members, et cetera. But when it comes down to it, when the voters voted on things and they approved them, that gives us the duty to provide them. And it's a timing situation, it's a debt load situation, et cetera. But the issue is, like, I'm a low debt guy. Like I don't like that. But the reality is the people of Midlothian spoke, and they said, we want these roadway projects done. We want this rec center done. We want this city hall done. We want this police station done. And so we are tasked with the duty, regardless of our personal opinion, to institute these things and to make them happen. And that impacts the tax rate, that impacts the debt load. And so our real reality is that the citizens of Midlothian, when they speak, we should respond. And I believe we're doing so.
Mayor, point blank, are you happy with this budget? Is there something that you would like to have seen that didn't happen? I mean, your overall on the budget.
Yeah, my overall, I would love to see the tax rate at 0, just like you would. And I would love to see our sales tax numbers through the roof so we could completely fund this budget as it sits with sales tax dollars. But that's just not a reality with where we're at right now as a community. But to answer your question, yes, I'm happy with the budget. I voted yes to it. I voted yes to the tax rate. I voted yes to the senior citizens tax freeze several years ago. I voted yes to the 6-cent deduction that we've seen over the last few years. I voted yes to the homestead exemption, and I could go on and on and on. The reality is that we're in an interesting time, and in our city's history, and I believe that we are establishing what Midlothian will be. This council that's seated currently is going to have a massive impact into how Midlothian is going to look 10, 20 years from now. And that includes what we do in budgets, and that includes how we police, and that includes the equipping our fire departments, that includes rehabbing our roadways, and I could go on and on and on. And if we took a zero-sum approach to all of those things, our city could turn downhill really fast. And so I am one that believes in proper balance and to toe the line and have those difficult conversations with people who have extreme opinions one way or the other, because there's both sides of it.
No.
Yeah. There's people out there shouting to lower the tax rate, which I get. There's also people out there shouting, fix this stuff, because we're a high-end city. And so I value both opinions, meet with them both, and then find some sort of solution somewhere in the middle. And it's a difficult thing to navigate, but I believe our council's done a good job of doing so.
One of the things that I want to bring up was something that came up online, and that was the raise that the council got. Now, I wanted to bring that up because, it's something that I've communicated with you and other council members, and I think that the way you explained and talked about it would be good and beneficial for the public to know.
Yeah.
If some of you didn't know, the council did raise what they get for their duties, and up a percentage. And I wanted to go ahead and have the mayor talk about that.
Yeah, absolutely. Happy to. So previously, in last year's budget and previous year's budget, the mayor, and Chris, you can correct me on the numbers if I'm wrong, but I believe the city council members got $75 per called meeting, and the mayor pro tem got $100 per called meeting, and then the mayor got $125 per called meeting. Called meetings, two a month, sometimes 3 if we have a workshop, give or take. Due to the demand and due to frankly, the expenses of serving on council, the council decided to up that number and to take more of a, for lack of a better term, I believe more of a stipend sort of approach in order to cover some of the expenses, some of the time commitment that's involved. And so now we're currently, with this approved budget, we're at $500 a month for a city council member, $750 a month for the mayor pro tem, and then $1,000 a month for the mayor. And I believe, and I know people that are watching this may be critical of this statement because they're going to think I'm biased, but I would have supported it for the previous mayor and for the future mayor, because it's taxing and it is a lot of time commitment and a lot of work. I put more hours into serving the city than I do at my regular day job, and it's a hard thing to do, but it's a reality of where we're at as a community. Since I became mayor, my wife she keeps closer track of this stuff than I do, but I probably spend roughly 40, no exaggeration, 40 hours a week on city stuff and meetings and public events and all the different things that are required, which I'm happy to do, and I'm having the time of my life doing it. But I will say that the expense that goes along with that, the invitations to all the nonprofit fundraisers and all these sorts of things are fantastic. But me not being a wealthy man, those things add up. And so I'm grateful to the council for recognizing the commitment that it takes to do this job and to do it well, and to help to supplement with that stipend that I believe is perfectly reasonable. It's $12,000 a year for a unofficially full-time employee.
Yeah, well, it doesn't sound like you're getting rich.
No, I'm having the time of my life doing it. I appreciate the opportunity to do it. I would do it for free. I'm blessed that the council saw fit to add that stipend in.
All right, Mayor. Well, now if you can you give a quick little update before we close out?
Yeah, there's a lot. There's a lot that goes on in the city of Midlothian. There's a lot of life going on. We've got, I mean, I don't know that people fully understand the spectrum of what all is involved in running a city, from policing to fire, which are the obvious ones, to roads, to the whole utility department, to water and wastewater, and park systems, and the list goes on and on and on. And the availability that all of our council members have to the community, I think, is second to none. We've seen a tremendous amount of community engagement from the council itself. But I'm excited to see where our community is headed. We're obviously experiencing a lot of growth, and I know there's some out there that have a lot of concerns regarding that. And to those folks, I would say, yes, I hear you loud and clear. And Midlothian's growing, Midlothian's changing. A lot of those projects that you're seeing constructed now were approved in the 90s and the early 2000s, and they're just now coming under construction. So I'm proud of this council and the decisions that we've made to this point. We've had some healthy dialogue, some heated debate, but ultimately, I believe we're landing on what's best for the citizens of Midlothian. So to the citizens of Midlothian, I would say, own your city, take pride in your city. This is a great place to live, and the community is what you make it. And so make it a good one. And I'm right here alongside of you, trying to do everything I can do to join you in that venture. And I know Chris and his team are as well.
Well, I appreciate you coming on and talking about this. I know that, there's a lot of time that you spend in your duties and, giving me a little bit of time so that we could get this information out. I really appreciate that, sir. Thank you.
Well, thank you for all you do as well. It's definitely a labor of love.
Yeah.
Appreciate it, DB.
Yeah, Chris, thank you so much. I know that you're not big on these things, and being able to get you the last few times, I feel really blessed about that. As you can see, I just do information and try to get it out there to the people. And so when I have somebody like you to kind of talk about the numbers and stuff, that really benefits. So thank you. Yep. I know this is your time, and I appreciate it.
No, we appreciate what you're doing. Thank you.
So, guys, I got some interviews coming up. For those of you that tune in, I have Senator Hall going to be coming on. I have our representative Brian Harrison coming on. I have a few guests coming on, and some other ones that I'm working on. So I hope that you will watch. I thank you so much for your time. I appreciate you guys giving me the follows, and this is a labor of love. This is my money that I spend on this just to inform you. I make no money off of this. So I appreciate it. Thank you again, gentlemen. I appreciate your time. Can you stick around after the show?
Absolutely.